Exactly what Kamala Harris has done. So how about this, Kamala Harris? Why don't you stop destroying American energy? Why don't you stop buying energy from tin-pot dictators all over the world? Let's buy American energy from American workers right here at home, and let's start doing it now. Now, Kamala also says that she is going to be a great friend of American manufacturers. She's going to be, but for 3.5 years, she hasn't done anything. Kurt, has she been a good fan of and a good friend of American manufacturers? Negative, exactly. To the workers out here, has she been a good friend of the American working man and woman? No. Absolutely not. Because look, Kamala Harris made a very dumb decision to try to ship all of our jobs overseas and to use your tax dollars to subsidize products not made by Americans, but made by the communist Chinese. It was Kamala Harris that implemented the EV mandate. It was Kamala Harris that implemented the policies that shut down American energy and instead wants us to buy energy from random people all over the globe. And it's Kamala Harris who, in the name of the Green News scam, wants to take your tax dollars and buy cars that are made in China. I think you ought to drive whatever the hell you want, because this is America, and that's what we believe. And by the way, if you're buying whatever car you want, you're going to buy cars made by American workers because those are the best cars in the world. It's very simple. Now, it's funny, I talked to the president earlier today, and he says hello. Sorry I can't be here with you, but he's running all over the country. I'm running all over the country because we believe it's important to win, so we're taking a divide and conquer strategy. But he said, you know, JD, the crazy thing about Kamala Harris is, even though she said she wanted to defund the police and ban fracking, she said she wanted to shut down American energy, and she wanted to open the border, and of course she's done all these things, Kamala Harris now pretends that she agrees with me on everything. Now, you trust, or if you watch what Kamala Harris is saying, she actually says now that she pretty much agrees with Donald Trump on everything. Now, she's not implementing those policies, by the way. She could, as the vice president, get to work right now if she actually agreed with the president. So she's lying to the American people because she knows that her record is a disaster and her policies are unpopular. But I said to the president, you know, I think I actually know, sir. I know what's going on. She doesn't think she's going to win this race, so she's auditioning for my job. She wants to become Trump's vice president, I think, because she knows the jig is up, but America is too smart for it. We are not going to promote Kamala Harris. We're going to say, you're fired to Kamala Harris, and kick her out of Washington, D.C. So I want to just tick through what her policies have done to the American people, and then I want to tick through what Donald Trump's policies have done and will do again for the American people. You know, 60% of Wisconsin businesses aren't hiring right now. That's because of Kamala Harris's policies. Is that a good idea? 70% of Wisconsin workers say that their pay has not kept up with the price of housing and the price of groceries. Is that a good thing? Over $11,000. That is what it costs the average Wisconsin family to buy today what they could have bought 3 years ago. Is that a good thing for Wisconsin families? And so Kamala Harris now wants a promotion. Are we going to give it to her? Absolutely not. We're not going to give it to her. Now, Kamala loves to talk about her tough-on-crime experience. She says that she was a tough-on-crime prosecutor. Well, you look at the record. The record of Kamala Harris is that she has been the best friend to the Mexican drug cartels that they have ever asked for. And you ask, why are our communities flooded with fentanyl? It's because of Kamala Harris. And why is it that hospital wait times have gone up? It's because Kamala Harris let in 25 million illegal aliens. And why can our municipal governments not afford to pay their police officers? Because Kamala Harris has got them paying for the health care of illegal aliens. This is not a program, ladies and gentlemen, that works for American workers. This is a program that works for people who shouldn't even be in this country in the first place. And Donald Trump, by the way, Donald Trump has got a different message to the 25 million people who are here in this country illegally. Pack your bags. You're going home in 6 months. And look, it's a disaster not just for public safety, but it's a disaster for the wages of workers. We know that when you let in 20 million illegal aliens, 25 million illegal aliens, and you let them stay here, and you give them health care, then what does it do? It undercuts the wages of American workers. That's why a lot of Wisconsin paychecks are not keeping pace with the price of inflation, because Kamala Harris let in people who shouldn't be in this country to begin with. That is what she has done. And let's just offer a little bit of a study in contrast here, because, my friends, it doesn't have to be like this. We can do better. This country can do so much better. We just need the leadership of Donald J. Trump, and that's exactly what we're going to do because of the people in this room. Now, compare and contrast. Compare Kamala Harris, opened the border, suspended deportations on day one, and stopped Donald Trump's Remain in Mexico policy. When Donald Trump is president, we're going to re-implement deportations, re-implement Remain in Mexico, and tell people they got to go back where they came from and come through the proper channels. Kamala Harris shut down American energy, raised the price of gas and utilities on American families and American manufacturers. Donald Trump's message and solution is simple. Drill, baby, drill. Open up America's energy markets and get it from our own workers. Now, Kamala Harris wants to tax the people in this room to send money to Chinese-made electric vehicles. Donald Trump wants people here to keep more of their own money and to buy products that are made right here in the United States and stamped with Made in USA. And finally, Kamala Harris would like to reward the companies that ship jobs overseas and raise your taxes. Donald Trump wants to cut your taxes and punish the companies that are doing business with the communist Chinese. Let's reward American manufacturers, not the corrupt businesses that are getting rich from Chinese slave labor. It's simple. It's common sense stuff. So I want to take some questions from the media here in just a second, but I want to leave you with one final thought here, because, you know, getting to run for the Vice President of the United States is the greatest honor of my life. It's the coolest thing. I get to fly around and drive around and see this country from a totally different perspective. And let me tell you the good news, my friends. The good news is we have the most beautiful country in the entire world. The good news is we have got natural resources that are the envy of the entire world. It's amazing. The Chinese and the Russians would kill for the stuff that we have right here in Wisconsin and all across our great country. We have the best workers and the best families anywhere in the world. And by the way, we've got the proudest cultural and historical traditions, I believe, that exist anywhere on the face of the earth. That is what we have going for us. The only thing that is broken about this country is our failed leadership. And that's why we got to fire Kamala Harris, replace her with Donald J. Trump, and get some leadership in this country that is equal to the job of leading the American people. So it's going to start right here in Wisconsin. We're going to win this race. We're going to win Wisconsin. We're going to take back this country, and we're going to do it because of every single one of you. God bless you guys, and thanks for having me. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Here, y'all want to see me take some questions from the media? All right. Let's do it. Now, I always say I'd like to start with the local reporters and the local TV channels if we can. So let's start there, and we'll take some questions from the national folks after that.
Senator Vance, Carl Winter from NBC 26 here in Green Bay.
Hey, Carl.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will remain on the ballot here in Wisconsin. The Wisconsin Election Commission says, despite him trying to get off of it in swing states. How do you think that affects yours and former President Trump's campaign?
Well, first of all, are we thrilled to have the endorsement of RFK and Tulsi Gabbard? We are. It's funny, as much as the media says that Trump is the candidate of division, the reality is that we, from Nikki Haley and Brian Kemp to RFK and Tulsi Gabbard, Donald Trump is the candidate of common sense and cutting out the craziness, and we're thrilled to have support from across the political spectrum. I mean, look, I think it's ridiculous that RFK has endorsed Donald Trump. He has petitioned to be taken off the Wisconsin ballot, but a bunch of bureaucrats are going to keep his name on the ballot because they think it'll hurt Donald Trump. I think we're going to win Wisconsin anyway, and we're going to fight for every single vote. That's our plan. Next question.
Hi, Senator Vance. Paul Stino from CBS here in Green Bay. The Harris campaign, in their campaign commercials, when they have, campaigns, they accuse you guys of kind of catering towards rich people more so than middle class when it comes to your economic policies. When you hear that argument, what's kind of your rebuttal to that, or what would be your counter argument to their claim right there? Thank you.
Well, look, my counter argument is that Donald Trump is a president for every American citizen, rich or poor. We just want people to have a good life in this country that all of us love. It's that simple. Now, when she says, look, she says that Donald Trump and me are the candidates of rich people, here's my response to that. First of all, I grew up in a poor family. And I grew up in the kind of family that suffers when Kamala Harris and people like her don't do their jobs. And let me just give you one example. We know it gets cold in Wisconsin, right? A lot colder than it does in Ohio. You guys are tougher up here than we are down a little further south. And look, during a cold winter, I have been on the receiving end of not having enough money, and where my grandmother would say, well, honey, we just can't turn on the heater tonight. We can't afford it. And so maybe you sit in front of a space heater, or maybe you just throw on a few extra blankets. And that's what a lot of American poor families deal with during the depths of a cold winter. I believe that if you work hard and play by the rules, we are the richest and most prosperous country. Rich or poor, you ought to be able to turn your heater on and heat your homes in the winter. Is that a simple thing that all of us believe in? Now, clearly, Kamala Harris doesn't believe in that because she has pursued policies that are making electricity and utilities go up by 30, 40, and 50%. So when she says that she's the candidate of the little guy can't afford to heat their homes because of Kamala Harris's policies. The little guy can't afford to put groceries on the table because of Kamala Harris's policies, and the little guy can't afford to buy a home because of Kamala Harris's policies. She is the president of a corrupt leadership in this country. Donald Trump is the president of the people, and that's why we're going to win. Next question.
Senator Ben Krumholz with Fox 11 in Green Bay. What do you want to see happen with abortion?
Well, what I want to see happen with abortion is that each state, and this is President Trump's view to be clear, each state ought to make their own abortion policy, okay? Wisconsin's going to have a different view than California. California's going to have a different view from Alabama. And what the president has been very clear about is he wants the voters to make those decisions in each individual state, and his government is going to focus on lowering prices for American families. His government is going to focus on closing down that southern border and stopping the flow of fentanyl and crime into our communities, and his government is going to focus on bringing peace and stability back to the world. I recognize that a lot of people don't agree with my views on abortion. A lot of people may not agree with President Trump's views on abortion. And I think that's why what the president has said makes a lot of sense. We need to let the voters of the individual states make these decisions. Now, by the way, that is not Kamala Harris's view. Kamala Harris wants to shut down Christian hospitals who don't agree with her radical agenda. Kamala Harris would like to force taxpayers to pay for late-term abortion, and I think that's despicable, certainly despicable to make taxpayers pay for it. So when Kamala Harris says that we are the extremists on abortion, she is the one that wants to force her radical abortion policy down the throats of the whole country. It's ridiculous, and I don't think the American people buy it. One more point on this, because it's so important. Look, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, believes in American families, and he wants Americans to be able to raise a family in comfort and stability. And I do think that we have become in this country, thanks to Kamala Harris's policies, anti-family. Who wants to start a family if you can't afford a home? Who wants to start a family if you can't afford groceries? Who wants to start a family if you feel like the President of the United States is not looking out for your interests? That is what Kamala Harris has done to this country. President Trump wants to give women and families choices. Let's have a pro-family country. Let's make it easier to bring new life into this world, and let's be a pro-family United States of America. That's our vision. We're going to fight for it. Thank you. Next question.
Hi, Senator. Jason Zimmerman from Action 2 News. First of all, how do you solve the crisis between Israel and Hamas and put an end to that conflict? And how concerned are you about the tension building between Israel and Iran right now?
Well, look, I worry about the tension a lot because Kamala Harris has given the Iranians billions of dollars, and they keep on buying weapons and attacking not just Israelis, but they keep on attacking Americans. It's crazy. Stop giving bad guys money. It's not that complicated. It's a very simple principle in American diplomacy. The second thing that I say is, look, it is not our business to micromanage Israel's war in the Middle East. Hamas is an evil organization. Thank you. Hamas is an evil organization. What we should be doing as an ally of Israel is empowering them to wipe Hamas off the face of the earth and get this war over. It's very simple. I think the problem with Kamala Harris's policies is it's like the dumbest of two possible worlds, right? You're saying that you want to, that's Kamala Harris for you, but you want to prolong. She's saying that she wants the war to end as quickly as possible, but she refuses to provide the necessary stuff so that Israel can end the war as quickly as possible. She says that she cares about innocent civilian casualties, and I do too. I don't want innocent people to die in this conflict. The solution to that, though, is to give people precision weapons that minimize civilian casualties and let Israel destroy Hamas and get this thing over once and for all. That's simple. Kamala Harris is pursuing the worst of all possible worlds. Donald Trump's going to bring some peace and stability and some common sense back to the United States of America foreign policy. Next question.
Hi, Senator Vance. Joe Schultz, Wisconsin Public Radio. State data shows that since 2021, Wisconsin's had more job openings than people on unemployment. You know, President Trump has talked about mass deportation effort, largest in U.S. history. Does that run the risk of worsening the state's labor shortage?
Well, look, we don't just want job openings, we want good job openings that allow people to provide for a family. And when you import millions upon millions of illegal aliens and you put them in the front of the line of American citizens, you destroy the economic foundation that allows the American people to get ahead in their own country. I do not buy for a second, do any of you buy for a second that the Kamala Harris economy has been good for American workers? Nobody buys it. Inflation has failed, wages have failed to keep pace with the price of groceries, the price of housing. So you've got people working harder and harder, feeling like they can't get ahead. They're in fact falling further behind as they work harder and harder. That is not an economic record to be proud of. And it's interesting that back when Joe Biden, remember him? He's still our president, technically. But back 6 weeks ago, when Joe Biden was still pretending that he was going to run for president, what the Democrats said is that our economy has been great for workers. And now, 6 weeks later, Kamala Harris is saying, yeah, the economy's been bad for workers, but don't blame me. Who am I? Well, the answer is, you're the vice president, do a better job, and we'd have a better economy. Next.
Aaron Palish with CNN. Thanks for taking my question. You're speaking at the Firefighters Union. You're speaking at the Firefighters Union convention tomorrow in Boston. I want to ask you a labor question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
131 Republican members of Congress last year co-signed a bill supporting a national right-to-work law. I'm wondering how you feel about that law nationally. And then here in Wisconsin, there's also a right-to-work law. Over in Michigan, they repealed a right-to-work law that went into effect earlier this year. Wondering whether you support Wisconsin's policy to keep it or Michigan's to repeal it.
Well, look, I'm not going to comment on what Wisconsin should do. Wisconsin ought to make its own decision on this, and Michigan ought to make its own decision on this. I did not sign on to the national legislation that you're talking about, and my view is the best thing for American workers, union and non-union alike, is rising wages, investing in American manufacturing, and investing in American workers, closing down that southern border. That's what workers need more than anything else. Safe communities and high wages, and that's what we believe in. So my message to the firefighters, it's been my same message to the police union. Of course, pretty much every police union in the country has endorsed me and President Trump. My message is, we want you to have safe jobs. We want you to be able to do what you can and do what you need to do without being destroyed by our public leadership. And we want you to have good wages for a fair day's work. That's true for the union workers, and that's true for the non-union workers too. Next question. Yes, sir.
Senator Vance, Gary Tenney, Fox News. Opioid epidemic hits close to home for you. And we've seen over the last
Sure.
4 years how every state has become a border state. Looking ahead, if there is a second Trump administration, what more would you do to address the opioid epidemic along the border, rather, or beyond just the wall? Would you be willing to go directly after the cartels in Mexico, in China, and how would you do that?
Well, look, I adhere to President Trump's very simple principle. Kamala Harris wants to let the Mexican drug cartels do whatever they want and go to war against American law enforcement. I think we ought to empower American law enforcement and go to war against the Mexican drug cartels. It's one of the biggest terrorist organizations in the entire world. We cannot let them operate freely in our country. And the other thing that's driving the fentanyl problem, and you're right, I've been affected by this very personally. And so when I think about this issue, I think about all the kids that are praying at the bedside of their mom or dad because their mom or dad just had an overdose. Because I was that kid at one point in my life, and I was very lucky because my mom woke up and we got a second chance with my mom, and she's been clean and sober for almost 10 years. And what a great thing that is. What a great grace. And Mom was going around the campaign trail with me actually the last couple of days. She had a very good time. And, you know, again, I would not have had that second opportunity with my mom if the poison that's coming across today was coming across 15 years ago. We would have never gotten that second chance. And that's what I want. I want more American children to have second chances because we know addiction is a terrible scourge. And some people, they're able to kick it 2 days after they get that habit, and some people it takes years of getting back on the horse, falling off the horse, and getting back on. We just want to promote as many second chances as possible. And here's something else we have to do other than go to war against those drug cartels. We have got to tell the Communist Chinese Party, stop manufacturing this garbage and sending it into our country. And one of the things that Donald Trump doesn't get nearly enough credit for, and there's a lot of things, but towards the end of his last term, he was on the cusp of striking a huge deal that was going to shut down fentanyl manufacturing in communist China, would have saved hundreds of thousands of American lives, and Kamala Harris let that languish. Instead of fighting for Americans, she continued to allow the communist Chinese to make this garbage. Our promise and our threat to the communist Chinese ought to be, if you want access to American markets, if you want to sell your stuff in the United States of America, stop manufacturing this poison that's killing our citizens. You just need strong leadership to do it. Thank you all. And why don't we do one more question, and then we're going to have to hit the road. Thank you all.
Senator Vance, Mike Bender with the New York Times. I know we've asked you a couple times today about the issue at Arlington National Cemetery, and I know you've mentioned that the campaign had permission to film there. One thing I didn't realize earlier today is that it's a federal law banning political campaigns from filming at grave sites. So I guess the question is, since families, to the best of my knowledge, civilians aren't able to grant exceptions to that, whether or not someone who wants to be president should have to abide by that law.
Well, Mike, look, I think the right person to ask is the Gold Star families who invited Donald Trump and lost a loved one because of Kamala Harris's failed policies. Were they happy to have the President of the United States there? And they would say, absolutely. Thank God somebody showed up. They wish Kamala Harris would have showed up. And she didn't. I mean, you guys in the media, you're acting like Donald Trump filmed a TV commercial at a gravesite. He was there providing emotional support to a lot of brave Americans who lost loved ones they never should have lost, and there happened to be a camera there, and somebody gave him permission to have that camera there. This is not a gross violation of federal law. This is a president who did what all presidents should do: show up and provide support to your own people. Thank you, sir. So again, I'm biased. I like Donald Trump. And I know you all do too. But look, ask the Gold Star families. And if there is a scandal here, I cannot get over the press's obsession with this. Because what is the bigger scandal? that Donald Trump was invited to stand by a graveside and actually accepted the invitation, or that Kamala Harris let 13 brave Americans die because she's a failure of a leader. And why hasn't Kamala Harris fired anybody who was implicated in getting those 13 Americans killed? And why hasn't there been a real investigation about why those 13 Americans got killed? I think that's a much, much bigger problem, and that's where the media ought to focus, not on Donald Trump doing his job and showing up as the president should. So I want to leave you with just a thought, because, you know, the media focuses a lot on what Kamala Harris said at the DNC. Did you all watch Kamala Harris's DNC speech? I knew what the answer was going to be. You all are smarter than I did, but I'm in this business, so I had to watch at least some of it. And she talked all the time about joy, about how joyous she was and how joyful she was. And as I was watching her, I was reflecting on the fact that 65% of our fellow citizens think the country's headed in the wrong direction. And a lot of our fellow citizens, especially the poorest Americans and a lot of our middle-class people, they can't afford food. They can't afford a place to live. They're young people. I mean, young Americans want to be able to buy a house, and they can't afford it. And I thought to myself, Kamala Harris has been vice president, I should say, for 3.5 years. And let's be honest, she's practically been the acting president, because we all know Joe Biden isn't home. She's been the acting president for 3.5 years in this country, and her citizens are suffering. She should not be feeling joy. She should be feeling shame. And she should be looking herself in the mirror and asking how she could do a better job. And what we have in our campaign, it's not this fake joy of Kamala Harris. It's the very real hope that the best days of this country are ahead of us. And you know why the best days of this country are ahead of us? Because of you. Because we have the best people, we have the best workers, and we have an American president, Donald J. Trump, that is going to run and fight